the beginning of October. So we're in that range where these landfalls happen around this time and over here for most of September and October.
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. And what's important to remember is we started this hurricane season, and it was very obvious, very clear from the preseason outlook from the top and most trusted hurricane prediction scientists and meteorologists that this would be one of the most active seasons we've seen. But what's important to remember is some of these named storms, which fell in this part of the calendar, came in years much less favorable as this one to hurricane development. And so that's just worth noting. And as you also said, we are heading into the portion of the calendar in which we've seen typically on average, this is many seasons averaged up years ago up until this point, but we see typically the most tropical activity in early part of September.
I know, yeah, we're like right here towards the end of August, and we still have all this to go. And plus with these, as you said, these forecasters from NOAA and Colorado State predicting the most above average forecast for this season, we still have some time to potentially see those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. And we really hope we don't see those numbers, but with this being the case here, talking about the tropics and hurricanes being the focus, all it takes is one storm, and it doesn't even have to be a doozy in terms of comparing it to historical storms. Even something like a tropical storm, depending on the area and the track, tropical storms sometimes can be worse than if a hurricane rolled through. It's all depending on location, because kind of briefly touch on what happens if a tropical storm rolls through an area and it's slower than a hurricane. What happens in terms of the rain?
I know, exactly. And I'm going to touch back on that point where you said it only takes one. Well, think of this season. Yeah, we haven't even reached peak hurricane season day at September 10th. And we've already had 2 United States landfalls. I mean, Beryl, that was a tropical storm, and then re-strengthened back into a hurricane landing in Texas. And then Debbie going into Florida and Georgia and along the East Coast. And Debbie was catastrophic just as it was. I mean, sadly, the fatalities that brought with Debbie, I mean, we still have time to go. And you can see from this tropical formation, we already have 3 shaded areas of outlooks currently in the Atlantic and 1 in the Gulf. So you can see as we head towards September formation, most of this area is very likely, decently likely to see some action that could start.
Yep, and Sam is right on cue, right on par. Without even seeing it, he led us right on into this next graphic perfectly. These are the current outlooks from the National Hurricane Center, and we saw a new outlook yesterday in terms of, well, we saw the outlook that was already there upgraded, and then today yet another change as another outlook is added. And as you can see here, remember that there are 3 separate levels on this outlook legend or chart, if you will, graphic. And this is not a cone, not a track, which are relating to specific storms and named storms, but this area here is outlined for possible further development and strengthening over the next 7 days. And this is decently long there.
I know we have few tropical waves, if you can see down here on your screen. That's why we have those shaded areas, and even that current low pressure system that continues to stay in the Gulf of Mexico now. National Hurricane Center putting on a shade of development over the course of the next few days. It only has a 20% chance of development. Here is a 40% chance. This is where me and Trey are definitely keeping our eyes on, is this orange shaded area. And then we also, it's our least concern over there with that yellow. Of course, it's behind everything, but something to still note of how active we are becoming in the start of September.
Yep. And notice the layout here. It's like a pipeline. It's right down the pipe and right down the racetrack, if you will. And if it appears to you that they're all in some sort of a linear semitoral line, they are. And the reason for that is it's more favorable down in this location. We'll tell you why. And Sam even touched on it already, that pink shade that he pointed out before we even came to this graphic. We said this is perfect. Well, it's also perfect because we'll show you that, and you add in your satellite imagery, it all just adds up, Sam.
Exactly. I know you see these tropical waves start to continue and making their way towards the Antilles. That's where this orange shaded area will definitely start that formation. getting into that part of the area of the Caribbean and south of the Caribbean islands. But we also still have to touch on this point here of that low pressure system here in the next few days.
Yeah, and this low pressure system here in the Gulf of Mexico is not necessarily concerning in the aspect of, we're going to see possibly a catastrophic, gigantic, huge storm system form here. But the reason this is decently concerning is because it's going to move up towards the north and east, and this setup, the way it's moving here out over the Gulf, very slow to come together. But with this system, it's a type of system that could provide a catastrophic event to a small area in terms of maybe a small portion of a state or maybe a coastline specifically. And the reason for it is the flooding, because if it picks up all that moisture there and it's not at the strength of a hurricane, hurricanes blow through there, and even the smallest hurricanes to the larger ones, keep in mind, they're moving quick and they blow through and move on out. And the wind damage is there, storm surge as well. But what these storm systems do is catch a lot of folks off guard. The weak tropical storms, sloppy storms, is because they run out of steam and they're weak. Once they hit that land, pretty quickly Mother Nature in the form of land starts to win over against these systems, and they circulate over an area. One that comes to mind specifically, Hurricane Harvey, out right here in this general portion, just completely caught that area off guard in terms of the rainfall accumulations. Folks were completely doubting the models, and it said at the top of the scale for rainfall potential, this is most likely and this is very likely that it will occur. They said, no way we see that much rainfall with Harvey. It almost doubled it. So that's why they saw the catastrophic flooding event. But we do have a lot of thunderstorms in the central part of the country. Remember, this is where we're getting into the meat and the potatoes of the tropical weather here and tropical climate, which is why we're here. We wanted to provide you that analysis of the tropics, and not in a way that's just speaking over your head, but in a way that we lay it out. Hey, this is here, this is what's happening, here's why, but here's how it affects you at home, Sam. And that's what these are.
Exactly. These, I mean, like you said, the meat and potatoes, these are all the components, these are all the ingredients that we are needing, that we look for to forecasting these types of storms, these tropical waves.
And what's important to note here, Sam, is that these aren't all in favor of hurricanes. These are actually the components for and against tropical development. Now you're going to see the elements here like wind shear and Saharan dust, these two specific tropical areas, those prohibit the tropical systems from forming. And then you have the moisture, the ocean heat, and the sea surface temperatures. All of that helps to enhance tropical development. So you mentioned in our update earlier, it's like baking a cookie. And if they didn't catch that, go ahead and give them that analogy there, because that was pretty smooth. I got to give it to him.
So you're viewing that orange shaded area as you're trying to bake cookies. Right now we're in that stage where we're getting our ingredients. We need the milk, we need the sugar, we need the flour. That's where we're at, and that's what this system is getting. It needs that milk, it needs the sugar. The milk being the low wind shear, it needs that low wind shear, and you can see down here in this area that red is the low wind shear, and on where it's targeting to go can have that. Next is the Saharan dust being your sugar. The sugar is now lessening, and that's what it needs, is less Saharan dust, because if there was so much Saharan dust like we had in August, it totally dries out the system and can't form. Now that we're seeing not a lot of Saharan dust coming off the coast of Africa, it has that sugar to get also initiated. So by the time this storm system comes towards the Antilles, that's when we can put it in the oven and becomes potentially a named storm, of a tropical storm. And as it makes its way, as it's baking towards Cuba, south of Cuba, that's when we can get our cookie, aka our hurricane.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you keep referencing, it's the baking analogy, these systems are a lot like that in the way that they're the opposite of systems on land, which love wind shear in terms of creating large destructive storm complexes, which we'll touch on in a moment. But also relating back to the baking, the first point I was making is that these storm systems, you see a lot of the components and they come together, and you have to wait to see if what you put in is the right mixture in terms of spitting out something that will produce a healthy storm. And it could come out as a total flop.
Yep, that's
And
definitely true.
As that's the case with total flops, like we mentioned with the sloppy tropical storms, if you have a flop of a system, somebody's catching the brunt of it. Somebody, metaphorically, will take the toll of Mother Nature feeling like she messed up there and failed to create a strong, beautiful system.
Yeah.
And that's where you see the chances for flip. So these, really what we're getting at is some form and fashion when you have a development and a tropical system, especially of the name variety, somebody's going to get affected if it moves up on land.
Someone's going to get cookies.
Yeah, somebody's getting cookies, and these cookies are a little bitter and tart, and you don't really want to take a piece of the pie, if you will. But here's something else, Sam. This is interesting, and we'll back it up and show you in just a second what this loop is. These are the tropical related winds. These are not what you just saw in terms of the wind shear. Wind shear is the turning of the winds with height. Wind shear as a hurricane, hurricanes are the opposite of like a tornadic system, a supercell on land, which needs a mesocyclone tilted in the vertical, which pushes it to the side. These are like a chimney. They have air rising up into the storm. It creates its own energy. It's like a combustion engine. And when you have these storms here, they love creating their own wind, and they can, a pretty strong amount of wind, but when you have the wind shear, it rips them apart. This is not wind shear. This is the storm-related wind, Sam, and I'll back it up once again, show them the shear, and then this loop. Watch it as it comes up towards the coastline. Of course, it's not a definite.
No, this is just a very far future outlook. This is not something we're all going by the book with. This is just one scenario.
Right, and that's just one opportunity, and it even doesn't mean if that was right on cue and that's exactly what happened, that doesn't mean that you're going to see a huge system or a system at all for that matter. Those are just the winds in the atmosphere. Like I said, just the sugar. You need the other elements of the bakery or whatever you're baking there. You know, here is the big dog. This is something, Sam, that throughout the past few months, we were hammering it out because the first thing we did when we got into the later part of the spring and early summer, we kept hammering out, hey, this has the potential to be a big tropical season, tropical season. It could be one of the most active. And then it was rather quiet, and folks started saying, what's going on here?
Where are the tropics?
And for a time, we kept hammering out this Saharan dust, and the reason for it is this Saharan dust was the watchdog and the guardian from allowing anything to develop out over the tropics, and this Saharan dust really kept Mother Nature from enhancing any of the other features. So though we had above average sea temperatures, we had low wind shear, and historically high temperatures for some areas of the Atlantic and the Gulf. The atmosphere wasn't able to utilize those and really get things cranking up in terms of the upper levels because it comes right off the coast of Africa here. Think about dust. If you were to inhale dust, Sam, and you'll see a graphic in just a moment that we put in here, it shows you, but if we were to inhale dust, we'd spit it out whether we chose to, or our body would do it for us.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that dust is the same, it's coming off the coast of Africa. It's that continent is dry. And like we said, warm, humid, and moist air is the fuel hurricanes need. And as it ingests that warm air, they shrink it. Ingest the dust, start to cut it off. And it all depends on how strong that tropical system or hurricane is. Weak ones, they start to, the combustion engine analogy. I know that the combustion engine analogy is a little complex, and we don't like to get complex here. We like to keep things simple.
Keep it plain and simple.
We're just average Joes and goofy guys here in the weather department. But really, it's all that simple. It keeps rising up, and it'll try to spit it out. But the more it spits out, it circulates the storm, cuts it off, and it dies. Here's what you're seeing right here as we move on. They're saying, just show us the graphic. And that's what they're seeing.
Exactly. I know this is exactly how to perfectly demonstrate it, as you see that flow coming up, but there's so much Saharan dust in the air that as it over the next few seconds dies off and weakens, and you can't bake those cookies.
Yeah, you can't bake those cookies without the crucial elements there, and some of the elements we've got, Sam, the red, that's going to be favorable for tropical
because
development.
now, as we get into September, compared to August, there was so much Saharan dust, and as we said, just coughed it up, couldn't get anything going. Now as we look towards September, the Saharan dust is taking a decrease. So now you can see all of these favorable conditions now we have, like you said, that low wind shear, those warm sea surface temperatures, less Saharan dust. That's where we can get going for September, potentially.
Yeah, Sam, absolutely. And this is the point in the calendar where not only do we see the historical significance of the most large storms, most powerful storms on the calendar acting in that particular part of the calendar, but we also see ingredients for the tropical systems as a whole to pack a punch, whether they are large or small. And it's important to remember that each part of a tropical system, whether it's a large hurricane or small, they provide different opportunities for different areas. So that's why when we say pay attention to those building codes and look at the lessons that Mother Nature's taught us from each of these storms, because unfortunately during the tragedies that have occurred, we learned something and we build on it. And the reason we're mentioning this is, say that the code requires something for wind and you think, oh, well, I'm just worried about the water. Well, you have a certain system that's really small in terms of its surface area. Well, that stronger storm or the stronger winds are going to be associated with that storm because it's small. And you may not get enough water, but you'll get the wind, and vice versa. You never know what part of the storm is going to be the most intense until it gets to you. And we'll have more about this and other elements of this throughout your forecast, first through the times we see you on the air, and of course your 7-day forecast, which will give you as we move on through the rest of tropical season. Sam, go ahead and give them a Sam quote.
Sam quote. Don't hate the weather, or don't hate the weather, man. Hate the weather.
Oh, there you go, Sam. He's wise beyond his years in there. But he's about tired of me. He's been here all day. But once again, Sam and I here in the weather department keeping you informed. We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't, we didn't feel it was necessary. And we're not hyping things up to overhype them or to get you to click. We're not in this for clicks.
No.
Our paychecks here, we get paid working for WXXV, whether it's sunny or wet. Well, if we do a good job. But anyway.
We just care about you and know that your weather authority is keeping on it.
Absolutely. And we're building a weather culture in which everybody understands and they want to reach out and learn. And that's what we want to provoke in our viewers as well, because that's how we were as young kids and in our youth as well. That's why we're in the business, to help folks. So stay tuned to your weather authority throughout the tropical season and throughout the year to get the best and latest weather analysis with our Barron weather software, giving you advance warning updates every 60 seconds on our Doppler radar. Sam, we're going to send them back home. If you're watching us on social media, tune in to WXXV News 25 at 9 p.m., South Mississippi's only 9 o'clock newscast, and they can catch WXXV News 25 at 10 on NBC as we roll on to high school football tonight. Jeb McCoskey and Ansley Brent. We'll see them then.
See's good. Cool. Wow, they turned it off perfectly.